Mohnish. I got to know you 5 or 6 years ago when I was reading Guy Spear's book, The Education of Value Investor. And you and Guy jointly bought a ticket to have lunch with Buffett, right? So I'm curious to ask, how was the experience? How is your relationship with Guy today? And in general, how do you get along with other investors?
My relationship with Guy is awesome. In fact, this morning, he called me and then he was showing me he's hanging out in Klosters in Switzerland, which is near Davos, and he just bought a home there, and he was just showing me the view, which is spectacular. It was really good. You know, the lunch with Buffett. When I told my wife that I wanted to bid for this lunch, she, has seen a lot of quirks in me over the years, and she just thought it was just another stupid quirk, and she said, whatever. And then after the lunch, and since then, she said that other than marrying me, it was the best thing you ever did. So that lunch, and I did not have this planned, that lunch is continuing to pay dividends endlessly. Okay, it's actually tremendous because, like, one of the things that happened at the lunch is I told Warren at the lunch. I said, look, Warren, my wife Arena is a great fan of yours, but her true love in life is Charlie. Okay, and he's very competitive. So he said, he tells her, listen, Charlie is just this old fart. He's very, very boring. Okay, I am the guy who's interesting. Okay, not him. Okay, so he said, now to prove to you that I'm the real thing and Charlie is useless, I'm going to set you guys to have lunch with Charlie. Okay, and now you can bribe Warren and have lunch with him, but there's no such bribing mechanism with Charlie. Okay, so I just thought Warren was kind of joking. Okay, then 3 days after the lunch, I get an email from Buffett's assistant going to Munger's assistant saying, hey, I met these guys in California, wonderful couple, blah, blah, blah. And they seem to have the misconception, Charlie, that you are more interesting than me. Of course, they're wrong, but I've told them to meet you for lunch and then they'll, have their head screwed on straight after that. Then, we had lunch with Charlie. So it was like buy one, get one free. Okay, it was great. Okay. And of course, I ended up enjoying the Charlie lunch a lot more than the Buffett lunch. Charlie is unplugged. Okay, it's always unplugged. He's going. And if you think he's unplugged in the daily journal meetings or the Berkshire meetings, you have not seen him one-on-one. One-on-one is completely unplugged. Like he would say something and I would just turn and say, did God just use that word? Did God just say that? Yes, I think. And then while I'm thinking about that, God says that word again. Okay, so it's really funny. But anyway, so what ended up happening is Charlie and I ended up becoming friends. We ended up becoming, I played a lot of bridge with him and his friends at the LA Country Club, which was a lot of fun because, Rick Goren passed away. But Rick Goren and Charlie and a couple other guys used to come for bridge. And we used to meet for lunch before the bridge game. So I'd be sitting there and there'd be Charlie and Rick in front of me. Okay. And I'm like pinching myself saying, is this real? What's going on? And then I would ask them all these questions about the 60s and, the Western Pacific Stock Exchange and all these things that they were doing and all these different stories they had. It was just hilarious stories, So anyway, the thing is that lunch has led to, probably several dinners a year with Charlie in his home, a lot of bridge games. And then on the Warren side, that friendship also continues. I got to know Warren's assistant really well because we were setting up the lunch and all that. Debbie is wonderful. And Guy and I told Debbie, listen, can we take you to lunch? And she said, look, if you come to Omaha on Thursday, when the meeting's on Saturday, because Friday is crazy, Thursday we can go for lunch. So for several years, Guy and I used to show up in Omaha on Thursday. And then we'd go to lunch with Debbie. Okay. The lunch with Debbie or the lunches with Debbie were 10x better than the lunch with Warren. Okay. Because I would get all this, like I would say, all these stories. Like, for example, the Wall Street Journal usually is printed very early. Like it's, I think by 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. it's printed. And Warren had figured out some way of getting the paper, not at 7 a.m., but like, if he was up late, he would get it almost the night before. And then, just the way, I got a lot of details. And like, I used to ask Debbie, this was like going back maybe 10 years. I said, Debbie, does he have a mobile phone? So she starts laughing. So she says, he has a mobile phone. It's usually sitting in my desk. Okay. And she says that when he goes out of town, I charge it and I give it to him. Okay. And he says she told me the only thing he knows how to do with it is to call me. Okay. So he says anytime he has to use it, he calls me and says, have such and such guy call me. And then he knows how to answer the phone. And that was it. Okay. That was the extent. And Charlie has never used a mobile phone in his life. Okay. So here's, some of the biggest Apple shareholders. And that's the situation with mobile phones. But anyway, I got a lot of, interesting data about how Warren functions. And also, of course, since the lunch, met him many, many more times. And one time he gave Guy and me a tour of his galactic headquarters. And so he takes us to the Coke machine. He says, this is my Coke fountain. And then, he pours himself a Coke. So anyway, what I would just say is that I just wanted to have lunch with him to thank him. I had no ulterior motive other than to just be able to face thank him. But what ended up happening was there was just all this other stuff. And, there's a meeting on Sunday in Omaha for the managers, all the Berkshire managers and the board members and all that. And Warren invites Guy and me to that Sunday brunch. Okay. And every year, Guy and I think that this is it. We're not going to get any more invitations. We've been getting invitations for like 10 years because sometimes we'd be at that brunch and I'm sitting with Guy and right behind us, Bill Gates and Bono are talking to each other. Okay. So it'd be just all these surreal things going on. Or, that NFL player, with the long first name and last name, Sue, Nagamadum, Sue, whatever his name is, I can't even pronounce it. He'd be hanging out. And then I'd see he's like the gentlest creature. I look at him and say, you could never harm anyone. He said, yeah, that's how I am normally, except on Sundays, So anyway, it was just been wonderful. And it continues, That lunch took place now, I think, 13 years ago, but it continues. So it's been great, wonderful, nothing to regret.